course, a major test for President Biden and his administration. Let's discuss now with KTVU political analyst Brian Sobel. And Brian, the chaotic and now deadly withdrawal, it is undercutting the Biden presidency. Explain how.
Well, in many ways. First of all, Heather, the series of assessments about what was going on in Afghanistan have all proven to be incorrect. And today we find ourselves on a very dark day in American history. Somewhat reminds me of the famed bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983, where we lost over 240 American service personnel. And this today comes as we are really undertaking a humanitarian mission to get people out of Afghanistan. And it's sad. It will impact the Biden presidency, and without extenuating it too much or extending it too much to the 2022 midterm elections. This, however, is not political today and should not be political today, but all these types of things have huge political ramifications. And
they certainly do. President Biden today saying that he bears the responsibility for the deadly attacks. The first casualties there in Afghanistan since February of 2020. Brian, we know that American lives, American service members, Afghan allies, all on the line right now. And as you mentioned, we are talking about real people, real consequences. But as you mentioned, there are political consequences here. How might all of this hurt President Biden and Democrats?
The handling of this situation has not been good. The optics are terrible. People on both sides of the aisle, I think, agree with that. And one could say, Heather, that there's no good way to exit a country. But the fact is that if you reverse engineer this thing, we went about it the wrong way. The president has to own it. Yes, other administrations did other things, but this is President Biden's, and he's a Democrat. And to the extent that Democrats will be running for office, or those that hold office will be running for re-election in 2022, to the extent that this it continues to be an ongoing crisis and has fallout that goes on for a long time, it could affect even the balance of the Congress. I mean, it extends that far.
Yeah, and Brian, sadly, we are just now getting word that a 13th service member has died in the attacks there at the Kabul airport. You mentioned this issue of whether to stay in Afghanistan or leave. Many foreign policy experts that I've spoken with say that really isn't the issue here anymore. It really is about how this withdrawal, how this entire situation has been handled.
Exactly. It was real clear we were going to leave Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And we hoped that by armoring and rearming our Afghan soldiers that we were in concert with in Afghanistan, that we would be able to leave a fighting force that would be able to defend the country. That didn't happen. Obviously, they rolled up the ANA, the Afghan National Army, very, very quickly. And so there wasn't going to be a great outcome here. However, we could have scheduled the exit of people in a different order. We could have slowly taken out our American citizens. We could have taken out the people holding the special visas. We could have done all that, and the last people to leave were the American military. As it stands now, it's a convoluted situation, and to be honest, our troops right now on the ground are really, really in harm's way. We saw it today, but they're sitting in the middle of a city of 4.5 million people and surrounded by the enemy. And let there be no doubt, however that suicide bomber got to the American line, they had to go through Taliban to do that. So this idea that we can trust the Taliban, I think, was disabused in a horrible, horrible way today.
Brian, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I want to talk about what the president said when he was campaigning in 2020. And he promised at that moment that he would end forever wars. I can see the argument being made once the deadline comes, once we are out of Afghanistan, of the president then sort of saying, look, I made good on my promise.
That, I think, was the hope of President Joe Biden, is that he'd get everybody out. It would go really smoothly. He'd say, you know, I shut it down, something I've wanted to do my entire life, really, in public office. But the problem is other countries, terrorist groups and others don't view the world through the same set of eyes that Joe Biden does, and we saw that today.
Yeah, obviously a lot of questions on the president's handling of the biggest foreign policy crisis on his watch to date. Brian Sobel, always appreciate your insight. Thanks again for joining us today.
You're welcome, Heather.
And be sure to stay with us.